is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Hello and welcome to Global Business Europe, live from CGTN in London. I'm Jamie Owen.
And I'm Juliet Mann. Our top stories. Greece's Prime Minister apologises for failures in tackling wildfires which have devastated the country as public anger grows.
Our other headlines: the Taliban tighten their grip on Afghan territory. Reports suggest they now control 65% of the country.
Two of the world's big car makers, France's Renault and China's Geely, pair up for a massive electric vehicle rollout.
And a new fixture for Messi. The footballer heads to France and Paris Saint-Germain. The Greek Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis has apologised for failures in tackling the country's devastating blazes and has announced a raft of relief measures to support fire victims. All this as hundreds of Greek firefighters continue to battle huge blazes on the island of Evia.
They're being helped by firefighters from European and Middle Eastern countries, including the UK, Egypt and Switzerland. CGTN's Norwegia Barkill reports.
The flames are still raging, but for those caught up in Greece's wildfires, leaving their lives behind is proving a difficult choice. Among the hardest hit areas is the country's second-largest island, Evia, where for an 8th day in a row, the overwhelming force of nature is being felt.
The police came. They told us to evacuate the village, but unfortunately we cannot evacuate because this is our property, and we worry that if we leave, our homes will be burned.
Helped by foreign support, Greece's emergency services are attempting to fight back. On the outskirts of the capital, Athens, worries are growing about new blazes where the potential risks are much higher. The speed at which the fires are spreading has angered many Greeks, who claim the government should have done more.
The extent of the destruction, especially in Evia and in Tiga, blackens our hearts, and I am the first to apologise for whatever weakness existed. I completely understand the pain of our citizens who saw their houses and property burning, the upheaval of having to abruptly leave their homes.
In an attempt to quell public anger, officials are set to announce relief measures for those who've lost homes, but that won't be enough to persuade some.
There is no way we will leave the village because I believe I can help in some way.
Firefighters in Evia are preparing for more strong winds which could make matters worse. In the week that a landmark UN report said human activity was spurring extreme weather events, hundreds of thousands of people in southern Europe are having to live with the deadly consequences. Norwegia Barkill, CGTN.
CGTN's correspondent Evangelo Sipsas is in Athens. Evangelo, firefighters still battling blazes on the island of Evia, but we're getting reports of more fires across the rest of the country.
Yep, that's correct. Besides the large fire in the northern part of Evia, there's been other fires in the southern part of Greece in the Peloponnese region where firefighters right now are trying to contain them. Specifically in the villages and towns of Douka, Lasdika and Lala, firefighters, volunteers and residents are using everything they can to try to contain the flames there before it reaches their villages. But also, there's been a number of helicopters and airplanes that have been dumping water near the ancient site of Olympia, site of the original Olympic Games, for quite a few hours now to try to contain the fire there as well before it reaches the ancient site and another town nearby called Gordinia. Further south in there, still in the Peloponnese region, near the historic town of Mani, there has been 2 helicopters mobilized to try to contain the fire there as well.
For Greeks who've lost their homes and lost their businesses, what relief measures has the Greek government announced?
Well, the Greek government announced immediate compensation and any suspension of any financial obligations for those who've been affected by the fires. In a televised statement late last night, the Greek Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis approved a fund relief of 500 million euros for the people who were affected from the fires. Specifically, he said that they will be relieved from any property taxes as well as social security obligations. In the meantime, for those who've been living in a rent and their apartments or houses are not livable, there will be subsidies for them. And for farmers who lost their farmlands or livestock, there will be a 4,000 euro fund towards them so they can rebuild and rebuy whatever they lost. Now, the housing compensation will reach up to 150,000 euros and 70% towards businesses. In the same announcement from the Greek Prime Minister, he apologized for any weakness of the government for not taking quick measures of containing the fire, and he swore pretty much with the Greek government and the authorities that they will try to identify those who are responsible and bring them to justice.
Evangelos Ipsas in Athens, thank you very much.
Well, wildfires are also burning in the United States. Firefighters are continuing to battle a blaze in California, which has become the second largest in the state's history. Thousands of people have been moved from their homes as 11 major wildfires burn throughout the state. The flames are being fueled by dry vegetation, high temperatures and strong winds. The Dixie Fire has already destroyed the entire town of Greenville, which dates back to California's gold rush.
Gone. It's gone. There's several times in the last week I've wished I could just go home. And then I remember you can't go home. There's nothing to go back to. Even if the house survived, like pretty much the rest of town is gone. There's no power, there's no water, everything's gone. I don't even know, I have no idea what to do, where to go. I'm kind of lost.
The Afghan Taliban is continuing to make rapid advances across the country. It's reported they've just captured a 7th regional capital in just 5 days. The Taliban has made quick gains as foreign forces withdraw from the country. An EU official says they now control 65% of territory. Well, let's talk to our correspondent Sultan Faizi, who's in Kabul. Sultan, these are reportedly major advances by the Taliban. What's the latest?
There's a fierce fighting going on in 12 provinces, Julia, as Ministry of Defense said that over 360 Taliban fighters have been killed across the country, and the provinces that have been, there are actually provinces been bombed by U.S. airstrikes. So I could say that so far provincial capitals of southern Lashkargah and Kandahar, and northern Kunduz, western Herat, and northern Mazar-e-Sharif, and northeastern Badakhshan, and Uruzgan, and also Baghlan provinces. 9 provinces are actually contested, and still the Afghan forces and Taliban are fighting each other. But Taliban could manage to overrun 4 major cities in Afghanistan so far that without any fightings they captured those provinces. But they had faced quite resistance in Shibirgan, in provinces like Shibirgan and Farah. So these all mean displacement and disaster and destruction.
Sultan, you've talked about that disaster, displacement, devastation. For all of those caught up in the conflict, how are people handling it?
Well, it has been very hard, especially the recent call I had from Mazar-e-Sharif was indicating on a huge wave of people trying to flee the city because there are threats, addressing Mazar-e-Sharif city. So far, 16 planes have been scheduled to leave from Mazar-e-Sharif to Kabul because the roads are blocked and people are surrounded. There are fighting going on across the city. So that's one side of the tragedy, but also there have been children dying of this war. We have seen a lot of footage on the social media circulating, showing a lot of children have died or lost their lives due to this bloody war, and there are a lot of people displaced from their houses and homes. Now they reached up to 1 million people. It's not easy. And also there are thousands of people trying to get out of the country. So there has been a disaster. There has been a very dramatic situation, especially a big tragedy for those who have no houses, no shelter, and they are not being able to get any help because there is war. And the government is also trying to manage help for people, but the incomes of the customs decreased to 57%, which is another crisis. So Afghanistan is basically facing a crisis that has no solution so far, and hopes and eyes are on Qatar. And let's see what will happen there, because the first day is scheduled for the regional countries and the Afghan delegation from the government side, and the second day is scheduled for Troika, and the third day is also with the regional countries. So between these talks, there will be talks between the Taliban and the Afghan officials behind the closed doors. We don't know yet what will happen next, but we hope there will be something good for at least civilians that have been suffering so far.
It's been important talks behind closed doors. Sultan Faizi, thank you.
Well, the United States has sent bombers to help Afghan forces hold off advances by the Taliban. All this comes as many analysts warn of regional insecurity. Mohammed Hadiz Pardes reports now from Kabul.
The Taliban's rapid gains in recent days have spread a fog of uncertainty in Afghanistan. As warring parties point fingers, many civilians are counting losses. Some Afghan analysts say the Taliban's advancements have raised questions over the capability of government forces and the promise of Washington's support. Researcher Said Mansour Sadat says insecurity in Afghanistan would directly affect the stability of the region.
There will be a problem for surrounding nations, like especially Central Asian countries like China or Uzbekistan or Turkmenistan. So the terrorist groups will emerge. Nobody will know. There will be unknown support for them.
Footage on social media platforms shows devastation from days of fighting. The United States has conducted airstrikes to push back the Taliban. An Afghan defense official tweeted that the group suffered casualties from a B-52 strike. Analyst Tariq Farhadi has been observing the situation in Afghanistan from abroad. He says bombing will not solve the misery.
Afghanistan's war has reached a catastrophic stage of epic nature by definition. There is a war between Taliban and the government in many cities of the country. Around the country, Lashkargah, Kandahar, Herat, Nimroz, Sheberghan, Kunduz. The Taliban attack, the government responds, but in the middle of this, the people who live in these cities are caught in sandwich. This has reached a humanitarian crisis level.
Farhadi says continued air support from the U.S. is a short-term tactic. He says the international community must take a stand against the wave of violence that has intensified since U.S. and other foreign troops pull out from Afghanistan. Mohammed Hadiz Pardes, CGTN, Kabul.
And a quick reminder, CGTN is available to watch for free on all of the major digital platforms, on Smart TV or online on Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire and Android TV, YouTube and Dailymotion, CGTN.com and the CGTN app.
You're watching CGTN. Still ahead, rebuilding America. President Biden's $1 trillion infrastructure plan for clean energy, internet and trains.
Search CGTN Europe wherever you get your podcasts to subscribe to the Agenda podcast. The Agenda with me, Stephen Cole, always gets to the heart of the story. Just subscribe today and listen now.
Covering the world from 4 continents. A new horizon. Teams in Beijing, Washington, D.C., Nairobi, and London. Who connect, interact, and inquire to bring you the stories that matter to all. The Link, only on CGTN. Facing the unknown is always difficult. In a world in turmoil, it's easy to lose orientation. But when the storms come, we have to see the possibilities. Reinvent. Find new opportunities. Discover a path forward. CGTN. See the difference.
The world has changed under the pressure of the pandemic. For many of us, life is returning to some kind of normal. As we're adapting to changes in all of our lives, let Global Business Europe be your guide to the new normal. Join us weekdays on CGTN.
Welcome back to Global Business Europe. Meal kit firm HelloFresh has posted strong second quarter sales. The food delivery sector shows no signs of slowing down despite the easing of pandemic restrictions. Now, shares in HelloFresh shot up about 9% in early trade. It's a Berlin-based firm. They made around 31 million orders in the second quarter. That's a 71% increase compared to the same period last year. But earnings margins were undercooked. There's also been a share price surge for Deliveroo after German company Delivery Hero bought a 5% stake, worth just under $395 million. Now, shares are up about 11% earlier. They're their highest point since the company was floated on the London stock market earlier this year. Delivery Hero, meanwhile, is set to expand in its home market, having quit 3 years ago to focus on Asia. And venture capitalists have been investing heavily in grocery delivery startups. Since 2020, they've invested $14 billion in the sector. Turkey's Getir and Germany's Flink raised a combined $800 million in one day in June, while GoPuff has raised $2.5 billion in the last 6 months. So there's a growing appetite for the grocery and meal delivery market. Kate Hardcastle is a retail expert and founder of Insight with Passion. She joins us now. Good to see you. Thanks for coming on the programme. Look, there's been a lot of buzz around online food delivery platforms, especially through lockdowns, yet it's still a tiny market. What more do you expect?
Well, I think we're going to see more growth. There's so many things that are factored here. I think at the start of lockdown across the world, people did look at alternate grocery supply and safe grocery supply, and they did use meal subscription services, restaurant delivery services to feed that. But actually, as you start to look at how consumer appetite has changed in other areas, things like wanting to learn new skill sets. So a lot of these meal subscriptions provide an element of cooking and guided cooking. So it feeds into that. Healthy eating has become even more paramount, and many people starting to work from home and staying working from home has meant that people are looking for a variety of meal options. So the consumer zeitgeist is also feeding into this, and I think that's created what we're seeing as certainly a growth market for months to come.
You say it's a growth market, but growth in this sector is going to be expensive. I mean, just look at HelloFresh, for example. Strong sales, but those margins, they've been squeezed.
There is so much to factor in when we think about these businesses. They've got to have strong local supply network. They've got to keep an eye on one of the most movable prices we've got in most continents at the moment in terms of the food pricing. They've got to make sure that their delivery model fits, and also delivery model versus a geographic region. Some areas are much easier to cater for when you've got a cluster of customers versus more spread out areas. So as these organisations grow, just as we saw the supermarket grocery delivery model start to adjust and take time to make profit, we're going to see that slow curve build to profit opportunity.
You talk about all those challenges. I mean, that's probably one of the reasons why the Ocado boss says that this is just a fad. Do you agree, or do you think that this rapid delivery model is going to be a serious contender for grocery market share?
There's so much crossover with the different types of provision here. We've got everything from meal subscription boxes to quick grocery delivery, which is very much based on that speed of delivery and those cluster zones where you've got a built-up community. So I think different types of the delivery service will work better than others and in different geographic location. But in terms of the idea of having food provided to your door rather than having that cumbersome chore to do every week, I don't think this is a slow burner. I think this is something where there is consumer appetite and demand for a good amount of time to come.
So let's talk about some of those companies that are making headlines. I'm thinking, Deliveroo and Delivery Hero getting that big stake. The Delivery Hero CEO said there's no scenario where buying that stake was going to be a bad investment, although neither company has made a profit. So talk me through the sense in that.
Well, I think it's down to consumer demand, but it's about these quite relatively new businesses starting to get a foothold with consumers. Many of them are offering discounted rates or even free boxes to start people off on the service. Huge amount of discounting that we saw too with the likes of Ocado when they start that delivery model. You've got to gain consumer trust, then you've got to build consumer loyalty. Another is very much about the staffing model. How are you going to make sure that brand is delivered to everyone's doorstep perfectly on time, in full, on every occasion? Very complex, needs a huge amount of investment. So I think they're seeing this as a long-term piece, but I think consumer appetite will continue to be there for two reasons, really. First and foremost, when it comes to the mundane like grocery, people just want to spend their time doing much better things, much more exciting things. And secondly, I think that it's that convenience that allows you to buy more frequently and make sure that you stay on top of the waste. Ecological and environmental is a factor here when it comes to consumers. They're going to be weighing up, how do you make sure that you're dealing with organisations that are doing the right thing by their staff, by their stakeholders, and also when it comes to ethical and environmental.
Well, it sounds like what we need are hungry consumers. Katie, a pleasure talking to you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Amazon says it'll pay compensation to customers affected by dangerous products sold by third-party sellers, up to $1,000. It says it'll consider larger claims where the seller is unresponsive. All this comes after the e-commerce giant was sued by US consumer safety regulators to force the recall of products with inadequate safety standards. Amazon says it has removed the majority of products causing concern. SoftBank is pausing investment in China until the country's regulatory crackdown on technology firms plays out. Its investments in China make up about a quarter of its fund's portfolio. The Japanese conglomerate posted a 39% drop in profit for the period between April and June compared with the same quarter last year. The US Senate has passed a $1 trillion infrastructure bill after a week-long debate. The bill, which might now see new spending on roads, bridges, rail links, buildings and internet access, is a priority for President Biden. 18 Republican senators supported the bill in previous procedural votes in a rare display of bipartisanship. Well, let's get more on that and talk to our correspondent, John Terrett, who's been watching proceedings for us. John, this really is a key priority for this administration, isn't it?
Yeah, it certainly is, Jamie. I mean, this is really the big one for President Biden, because when he looks at this, he sees job creation in the future. And I think the way that they got bipartisan support for this, that is to say Republicans and Democrats pretty much on the same page, is because it's been billed as moving America into the next generation, basically getting the U.S. to speed up a bit, because a lot of the infrastructure in this country is not as good as it is in other parts of the world. I'm thinking particularly of airports and certainly of roads. So in this bill, which has just passed within the last hour in the Senate only so far, there's $500 billion of fresh spending on the table. That is $500 billion on top of what the Congress was already going to spend on these sort of things. And these things are roads and bridges. You remember back in Minnesota in 2007, a bridge simply fell down, it just dropped into the river, killed people. Well, there's a lot of bridges that are maybe not as bad as that, but are thought to be getting on for that way. So there's money for that sort of stuff. Also for ports and airports and waterways. So it's kind of a bill about getting around America, getting around the country. There's also money in there for other things as well, including, I note, the expansion of broadband, because an extraordinary 3% of Americans don't have broadband. I mean, I don't know how they survive, quite frankly, but they don't. I guess they're on dial-up out there in the heartlands. I really don't know. Anyway, that's what the money is going to be used for. And as I say, it has bipartisan support between the Republicans and the Democrats, up to a point. Republicans, I think, generally speaking, feel that this is too much spending, and they've kind of grudgingly gone away with it, a little bit gone along with it. Democrats, I think, feel that it is far too little, as I will explain to you in just a moment. It is true to say it's a fraction of what Joe Biden first floated earlier in the year when he came to office. He was talking about all those spending plans, and I think the infrastructure plan was $2 to $3 trillion. Well, it's a third of that. However, it has just passed in the Senate, and according to my reckoning, and I could be wrong here, so don't hold me to this, I've got 19 Republicans voting in favor, and of course all Democrats. So that means it clears the Senate, and the big question is what happens next, which, funnily enough, I think you're about to ask me, aren't you?
Well, John, just for those of us who are not experts in the American Constitution, it's important to make clear this is not a done deal yet, is it?
No, it is not, because it has to go on to the House, or maybe not. We shall have to wait and see. Look, what's going to happen here is that the Democrats are going to push on. So they've got their infrastructure bill today, $1 trillion, very good, but they want to go much further than that. And Chuck Schumer, who is the majority leader in the Senate, has just outlined the beginning of the process, the procedural process, to get them to what will be a $3.5 billion spending plan. And the Democrats say, well, this bill is all very well, but, you know, if you're going to have a good road to drive on to get to work and a good bridge to drive over to get to work, you also need to make sure that your childcare is as good as it possibly can be, and your elderly care for your mother or your grandmother is as good as it possibly can be. And also there's climate change. And here is the big sticking point, because they're going to bring in climate change now. And President Trump has already tweeted that this is the beginning of the Green New Deal, which Republicans are by and large very, very against. So even moderate Democrats are not on board with this monster of a bill that is coming down the pike now. The question, as I understand it, is can they get this done without going through the House? There is a mechanism. I believe it's hugely complicated. I won't trouble you with it now. But the problem is that Nancy Pelosi, who is the Speaker of the House of Representatives, has already said that she won't bring the smaller bill, which has just been passed in the last hour, to a vote in the House until the Senate approves the $3.5 trillion bill that the Democrats are moving on now to do, to try and get through entirely on their own without any help from Republicans. So the bottom line is, yes, we have an infrastructure bill. It's $1 trillion. $3.5 trillion of more spending is now being planned. But when might we see it enacted into law? The answer is potentially, Jamie, many weeks and even months. Such is the system here.
John, we shall no doubt talk about it again. For the moment, John Terrett there, our correspondent in New York. Thank you very much. We're just hearing the Democratic New York Governor Andrew Cuomo has resigned in the last few minutes. He's been making a televised statement addressing allegations that he sexually harassed 11 women, including several working in his office. An inquiry by the state's Attorney General published last week found Mr. Cuomo's alleged behavior had violated state and federal law. Mr. Cuomo has denied all of those allegations, but said the best thing he could now do would be to step aside and let the government get back to governing. His resignation will take effect in 14 days' time. He'd face growing pressure to resign after senior Democrats, including President Joe Biden, called for him to step down.
Lionel Messi has agreed a 2-year deal with Paris Saint-Germain. The Argentinian forward, considered by many to be the world's greatest footballer, has arrived in the French capital. Messi has been at Barcelona for his entire professional career and was set to extend his stay. But the club were unable to afford a new deal under a financial fair play rules in Spain. Well, our correspondent Ross Cullen is in Paris. Ross, good to see you. Tell us more about the deal and where we are with it.
Well, Julia, I mean, it was a real shock deal. This is a blockbuster move. Lionel Messi is synonymous with Barcelona. The two go together a bit like Jamie Owen and sharp suits. That blue and red shirt of Barcelona, synonymous with Lionel Messi. He played more than 770 times for the club, scored more than 670 goals for Barcelona, won 10 domestic La Liga titles, another 4 Champions League trophies, 35 trophies in all. He joined Barcelona at age 13 when he was a child. He's now a 34-year-old father of 3. 21 years there, it has now come to an end. Something unthinkable to many football fans across the world, that Lionel Messi could be playing anywhere else apart from Barcelona. But he is here in Paris. He is going to be signing for Paris Saint-Germain. You can see the French Giants megastore behind me here on the Champs-Élysées. But it really has just been a few days of heightened emotion when it comes to Lionel Messi saying he didn't want it to end this way. He didn't want to leave Barcelona, tearing up in his news conference on Sunday, saying it had to be this way. He didn't get the goodbye he wanted with fans. He did try to leave the club last year, but he didn't want to leave this year. He offered to cut his wages by 50%, but Barcelona are hundreds of millions of dollars in debt. They just couldn't afford to keep him and abide by those financial play rules, so he had a free transfer possibility. So where has he come? He has come to Paris Saint-Germain, where he links up with what is already a star-studded lineup.
Well, Paris Saint-Germain do have the money for him. As you mentioned, it was really emotional for Messi, also for Barcelona fans. Was PSG the inevitable next move for him?
He could perhaps have gone to Manchester City because he played for so long in Barcelona under the current Manchester City coach, Pep Guardiola. But it was always seen when Neymar, who is here at Barcelona, said, please come back to Paris Saint-Germain. I want to link up with you again. And the financial clout that Paris Saint-Germain have to be able to deal with his salary. We expect it to be in the range of $40 million a year as well, and the chance to link up with so many of the top players here. What we are seeing, Julia, is perhaps the creation of a new Galacticos, something that we saw with Real Madrid about 15 years ago. David Beckham, Zinedine Zidane, Luis Figo, all being brought to the Spanish capital to play for Real Madrid. Now here in Paris, we have at PSG Neymar, the world's most expensive player, who also went from Barcelona to PSG. Kylian Mbappe, who at 22 has already won the World Cup with France. Now we have Messi joining the forward lineup as well. 2 players who won the Euro 2020 final just last month. Italy beating England. Gianluigi Donnarumma, the goalkeeper, saving some of those penalties, and his compatriot Marco Verratti also in this lineup, along with Sergio Ramos, who's won 4 Champions Leagues for Real Madrid. He's left Real Madrid and has joined PSG. So really the Qatari owners are hoping that this accumulation of star-studded talent could perhaps allow them to win the Champions League. That's the one trophy that they really want to win above all, the European Cup. They got to the final 2 years ago but lost to Bayern Munich. But Julia, it must also be mentioned that they are not even the French League champions. Lille beat PSG to the domestic trophy last season, so the first job for Messi is to try to help his new colleagues here at Paris Saint-Germain win the French League.
Oh, well, he is the best player in the world, apparently. I want to know which number he's going to wear on the back of his shirt. Ross Cullen, thanks for your update.
You're watching CGTN. Still ahead, the road to electric. 2 of the world's biggest car makers join forces. We'll be finding out what it all means for the journey ahead.
The EU's digital COVID certificate, which offers the promise of unlocking hassle-free travel around Europe this summer.
In less than 2 weeks' time, the Czech border will also open to all EU and Serbian citizens.
4.4 million Hungarians received their first dose of COVID vaccine.
18 and over can receive a COVID-19 vaccination, but it does come with conditions.
Third wave will probably take longer to emerge. This vaccination centre is part of a massive effort to try and drive down the numbers of the new variant that was first identified in India.
On the agenda with me, Stephen Cole, we look up into space. We look down into data. We look at debt. We look at politics. We look at opioids, climate change. We look at all the issues that really matter around the world. But you matter too. We want to tell the stories you want to see and hear about. Make it your agenda.
We can try out the wild and crazy ideas.
Nothing can stop an idea whose time is coming. This idea is coming.
I actually feel quite comfortable in isolation.
We should all be very basic when we're trying to save the world.
Oh, no.
We hope it will happen. We have to live in hope.
The agreement is signed. But what is the real deal now the UK has left the EU? For trade, for business, for the city, for ordinary people. Make sense of Brexit with CGTN. Hello, welcome back to Global Business Europe with Jamie Owen and Juliet Mann. Our top stories: Greece's Prime Minister apologises for failures in tackling wildfires which have devastated the country as public anger grows.
The Taliban tightened their grip on Afghan territory. Reports say they now control 65% of the country.
In the last few minutes, Democratic New York Governor Andrew Cuomo has resigned. He's been making a televised statement addressing allegations that he sexually harassed 11 women, including several working in his office.
And a new fixture for Messi. The footballer heads to France and Paris Saint-Germain. German Chancellor Angela Merkel is meeting state leaders to hammer out a COVID strategy for the coming months. Authorities are trying to avoid a new wave of infections driven by the spread of the Delta variant. Our correspondent Ryan Thompson's in Frankfurt. Ryan, with Germany struggling to get the pandemic under control and business confidence faltering, what did Chancellor Merkel's office push for and agree to?
Hi there, Juliet. Yeah, you're right. Business confidence at a shaky point right now. Just in the last day, we've seen this ZEW business survey suggesting that some of the top companies in Germany are nervous about Angela Merkel's departure at the end of September. And certainly there is a lot that is going to change between now and then. Notably, some new pandemic rules which were ironed out between the Chancellor and the 16 state premiers today to really confront this fourth wave of the pandemic. Germany's in an okay position right now. It's averaging about 3,000, 4,000 cases a day. Not bad for a country of 88 million, especially compared to neighboring France or Great Britain, which are seeing a much higher case count and really struggling to make up for this Delta variant. But some new rules will come into effect in the coming days and weeks. Notably, we will see the end of those free health tests by October, free antigen tests by the beginning of October. The point of that is to get people who are hesitant to vaccinate to actually go out and get the jab in the meantime. They no longer want the government to be footing the bill now that there is plenty of supplies for people to get this on their own. There will also be new required testing for hospitals, hairdressers, indoor dining, in the places where the incidence rate is above 35. The point of this, it kind of introduces a similar health pass program to what we are seeing in France. The point of it being to, again, inconvenience people who might be at risk to get the test and to get vaccinated before this October point, because if you follow the timeline, there's just enough time between now and October to get a full vaccination. Overall, much more vaccination pressure being put on people. Also, the way they will measure the progress of the pandemic here in Germany and what kind of toll it's taking on, they will start looking at hospitalizations as the key metric for the government to make a lot of these important decisions.
Ryan, as well as talking about COVID today, they also talked about the floods, because we've got the pandemic, but we've also got extreme weather.
Exactly. And these floods are a challenging situation for Germany. They really took the country by surprise, and now they are cleaning up. We were just in the flood zone yesterday, and it is still very much a precarious situation with a lot of people struggling to make sense and get the help that they need. The CDU leader of North Rhine-Westphalia, which is where many of these flood zones are, Armin Laschet, he's also poised to take the CDU reins if they are able to win the elections in September. He has said that it will cost $30 billion minimum for this recovery. The announcement from the meeting today is that the recovery fund will total that amount of money, despite the fact that it's more than double some of the early estimates. They're also trying to ease access for these people who need help right now, waiving a lot of the funds and waiving a lot of the costs and the permitting issues that would be normally required here to make sure that these people can get back on their feet as soon as possible, Juliet.
Ryan Thompson in Frankfurt, thank you.
Two of the world's biggest automakers are to join forces in a deal that could transform the electric car revolution in Asia. France's Renault and China's Geely are to collaborate on the development of a new hybrid range of vehicles, initially aimed at markets in China and the Republic of Korea. If it proves a success, then the rollout could continue across the region. Well, let's talk now to Jim Holder, the editorial director of Autocar, the news website. Jim, welcome. How significant is this deal, and what does it tell us about China's EV policy?
Yeah, absolutely. It's very significant, I think, from two aspects, really. First of all, it gets Renault back into China. It withdrew essentially from the market just over a year ago, but it's the world's largest car market, and significantly, it's the world's largest electric car market. So it gets Renault back in with a foothold there, but it also underlines the power and the importance of these electrified cars to Geely, which is China's largest car maker by volume and privately owned. It's an incredibly agile car maker with its proverbial finger in many pies. It owns Volvo, it owns Lotus. It has spread its wings internationally. But it tells us that China is going to try and take leadership in the global electrified car market. We've known this for a decade or more, but this is yet another step along those lines, and it helps Geely shortcut some of the manufacturing and supply chain issues that it would have otherwise faced along this journey.
Is this a marriage of equals? I mean, who gains most from this arrangement?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think probably most commentators would suggest that Geely takes the most out of it. It gets a lot of know-how from Renault and access to it. It gets to shortcut, as I say, some of the harder parts of the manufacturing process. You know, it should be remembered that Renault are world leaders in electrification. The Renault Zoe, the highest-selling electric car in Europe, Western Europe last year, outselling even the Tesla Model 3. So they have an awful lot of know-how that Geely is getting at least some level of access to through this deal.
Is there any danger of a crowded marriage here? Because there is a Renault-Nissan tie-up, isn't there? How is this going to impact that alliance?
Absolutely. The Renault-Nissan alliance, of course, is the crux of that partnership and what gives the two brands the scale there. Very noticeably, Nissan has been quite silent so far on this proposed deal. The relationship between the two sides has been pretty frosty in recent years. It's appeared to have thawed to some degree in recent months, but it is noticeable how quiet Nissan has been about this deal. And it is possible that the Renault's urgency to get back into China could have upset its partner. So commentators will be watching that very closely. And of course, we'll see how that develops over the coming weeks and months.
Jim, good to see you. Thanks very much for coming on the programme. Jim Holder there from the Autocar news website.
Well, Jim mentioned Tesla, and sales of Tesla cars in China plunged 69% last month. Just over 8,500 vehicles were sold in July, and that's down from close to 33,000 in June. And all this comes after Tesla cars sold in the country were recalled. All of them were over safety concerns. Well, Tesla, which has just launched a new, cheaper version of the Model Y in China, is also facing increasing competition from low-cost domestic rivals.
The Chinese mainland has reported 143 new coronavirus cases, 108 of them local infections. The mainland now has over 1,700 active cases. Central China's Henan province has become the latest centre of the outbreaks. Over 120 cases have been confirmed there since the start of August.
In the UK, they've reported its highest daily total of COVID deaths since March. According to government figures released on Tuesday, 146 people died within 28 days of a positive COVID test. The total number of deaths over the last 7 days is up 14% at 622.
A Chinese court has upheld a Canadian man's death sentence for drug smuggling. Robert Lloyd Schellenberg was convicted of attempting to smuggle drugs from China to Australia in 2018. The court said it rejected his appeal because the evidence identified in the first trial was clear.
China has recalled its ambassador to Lithuania and demanded the Lithuanian government do the same. It's in response to the Baltic country allowing Taiwan authorities to open a representative office under the name of Taiwan. China's Foreign Ministry of Foreign Affairs says the move by the Lithuanian government severely undermines China's sovereignty and territorial integrity.
2021 has been a year like no other for Spain. In addition, of course, to the pandemic, Spaniards have also experienced extreme weather, from heavy snow to roasting heat. However, the fluctuating conditions have also created new business opportunities. Rahul Pathak reports now from Madrid.
Summertime in Madrid. Unlike Barcelona and Valencia, there is no sea here, so you have to cool down any way you can. Swimming pools are popular, but with capacity limited, not everyone gets a chance to take a dip. 6 months ago, thanks to Storm Filomena, Spain registered its lowest temperature on record, minus 35.8 degrees Celsius. This summer, the mercury has hit 40+ degrees. These wild swings in temperature are a major cause for concern.
Bueno, es un problema ya en presente.
This is a major problem right now. It affects us today, and it's going to get worse in the future if we don't reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. That's the key to this problem.
La clave del problema.
As the climate debate continues, Madrid's residents are looking at ways to stay cool in the summer sun. One start-up, Swimmy, has decided to lend a hand. It offers people the chance to hire private swimming pools for their use, and so far the take-up has been impressive.
El segundo país por detrás de Francia es España, con más de 1.100.000 piscinas.
Spain has the second highest number of swimming pools in Europe, over 1.1 million, and many of them are closed or the owners just don't make that much use of them. So why not make them available and share them with other people so they can enjoy them?
Puedan disfrutarlas.
Now, with the recent rise in the COVID infection rates here, many people have opted to stay within their own bubbles here in Spain, so to stay with friends or with family. So renting out your own private pool is the perfect way to get that holiday experience, but without having to deal with the large crowds at the large public pools in the city. Spain has seen its largest temperature swing in history this year, and the government has taken this debate seriously, promising to do more about climate change. But for now, for the locals at least, it's all about staying cool in the summer sun. Rahul Pathak, CGTN, Madrid.
I want to jump in. You're watching CGTN. Still ahead, why hip-hop is getting a new sound from female Chinese rappers.
Each day, there are millions of stories. Each one can open new perspectives, new possibilities. Wherever you look, we are there. To see, discover, explore. We put the pieces together to find what really matters to you. All around the world, all around the clock. Our reporters are at home across the globe. From our headquarters in Beijing and production centers in Washington, Nairobi, and London. China Global Television Network. Stories from across the globe, reaching people across the globe. CGTN. See the difference.
Mari, what would you say is a good question?
Stephen, I'd say it's one where there's always more than one answer.
The Answers Project is a new podcast series from CGTN Europe. With me, Stephen Cole.
And me, Mari Beveridge. In each episode, we'll take a complex question.
And with the help of some of the world's foremost experts, shine light on some of the answers. So join us for The Answers Project.
Available wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello, welcome back to Global Business Europe. Austria and China are marking 50 years of diplomatic relations with a commemorative stamp. China's president recently offered to work with Austria to advance the construction of the new Silk Road. Johannes Pleshberger reports.
A peony from the Far East and an Edelweiss from the Alps. Important symbols of both countries put together on a special stamp issued by the Austrian Post to mark the 50th anniversary of diplomatic relations between Austria and China. China's ambassador was on hand to receive the stamp at the postal headquarters in Vienna.
Die Provinz der Rose verkörpert die Schönheit.
The peony embodies beauty, happiness and joy. The Edelweiss embodies courage and eternal love.
Verkörpert den Mut und die ewige Liebe.
A floral friendship that also flourishes economically. According to Austria's Minister of Economics, following a pandemic-related slump, exports to China are now booming again, making China Austria's fourth most important trading partner.
It's important to expand these business relations, not only at the diplomatic level, but also to provide help and support to companies.
Part of the discussion is the new Silk Road, with which China is gaining global influence, with billion-dollar infrastructure projects around the world. The European Union, of which Austria is a member, launched its own large infrastructure strategy last month.
We very much welcome the fact that the EU is also more willing to improve infrastructure in Europe and with the rest of the world. But we think it is even better if we, China and the EU, work together.
Austria is not going it alone here. We are the European Union, and together we are strong, especially in the global interplay with the US and with China, and that also applies to the Silk Road. In
the 1960s, the relationship between China and the West was rather cold and distant. Nevertheless, in 1967, Austria delivered its first steel plant to the People's Republic. Then, in 1971, there was finally a rapprochement with the West, with the official establishment of diplomatic relations.
Austria was one of the first countries in Europe to recognize China. In 1974, I myself was one of the first exchange students in China, and at that time China was still poor, you could say, and then of course it has now developed brilliantly in the last decades.
A sign of this cooperation now embodied in a stamp. Austrian Swarovski and Mozart stamps are already quite popular among Chinese collectors. The Austrian Postal Service now hopes that the Peony Edelweiss stamp will also become a requested collector's item. Johannes Pleshberger, CGTN, Vienna.
Chinese rap and hip-hop is a growing music genre, and an increasing number of female rappers are using it to tell their stories. Xu Xingchen reports.
So this is a rehearsal for a reality TV show called Girls Like Us. It is the first show that focuses on female rappers here in China, and look how daring and expressive they are with their music.
I know that I'll be big one day, like international superstar. It's just that it's a matter of time.
It's just, you know, it's youth energy. It's about speaking out. It's about representing who you are. It's something that's like written in my DNA.
Female rappers write their songs from a female perspective. I think there are many people who like female rappers, but they might be more popular among women.
China's hip-hop scene has changed over the past 2 years, with more female rappers like these girls breaking boundaries.
说唱文化刚刚在国内流行起来的时候，那几年是
When hip-hop first entered China, people thought girls could only do hooks and sing instead of rapping, but things have changed over the past 2 years as more female rappers took the stage.
Ray says when she first started, she wanted to impress her male counterparts with great rapping skills. But now, she's focusing on her own music. Bambi hopes her songs can make China's hip-hop global.
那我作为一个中国 rapper， 如果我可以把我自己的音乐
I'm a rapper from China. If my sounds can be heard and welcomed globally, it will still be hip-hop, but it will be more than a piece of music. It will make China's music global.
But some believe Chinese music is already inspiring international artists.
我觉得已经走出国门了，因为就最近听
I think Chinese hip-hop is already global. Some hip-hop songs from overseas use Chinese flutes. I think it's a two-way influence. We brought hip-hop into China, and foreign artists are also inspired by us.
Hip-hop continues to grow in China and is expected to reach a market of over $700 million by 2024, with an annual average growth of over 25%. And female rappers are undoubtedly going to be major players in this fast-growing music genre. Xu Xingchen, CGTN, Wuxi.
More than 150,000 people have been moved from their homes to make way for a herd of migrating elephants. Thousands of police officers are monitoring the 14 elephants who've been trekking through China for 17 months. The elephants have been walking through towns and countrysides and have destroyed millions of dollars worth of crops. The elephants have now been guided across the Yuanzhong River, and a path is being cleared for them to return home to their nature reserve. The herd couldn't cross the river in the rainy season, so what else? They used the bridge.
And to see more on the incredible journey of the elephants' trek through China, go to europe.cgtn.com.
The headlines again. Greece's Prime Minister apologises for failures in tackling wildfires which have devastated his country as public anger grows.
The Taliban tighten their grip on Afghan territory. Reports say they now control 65% of the country.
And while we've been on air, the Democratic New York Governor Andrew Cuomo has resigned. He's been making a televised statement in the last few minutes addressing allegations that he's sexually harassed 11 women, including several working in his office.
And a new fixture for Messi. The footballer heads to France and Paris Saint-Germain.
And that's full time for Global Business Europe. Thank you for watching.
There's more on all of our stories at europe.cgtn.com, and do follow CGTN Europe on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. We're on smart TV apps such as Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire and Android TV, YouTube, Dailymotion, CGTN.com and the CGTN app.
Coming up next on CGTN, it's Africa Live. We'll see you again tomorrow, same time, same place. From all of the team in London, it's goodbye.
Goodbye.